protect me. Okay, good morning. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to move on today to the trying to get some better insights, deeper insights into the exact nature of the parent-child relationship, and how we can build it up. Some of the buzzwords I guess we need to focus on. An effective parent is authoritative, not authoritarian or permissive. So you're not guiding your children through controlling them as some scary authority. That has its limitations, and permissiveness also has its limitations. They also have their advantages, but they have limitations. The way to go is down the middle, is to be authoritative, which means that you are in control, but you have a warm and loving relationship with the child. And this is a prerequisite for having that good relationship. You're not your child's friend. You know, there's some scary stories out there. Dr. Felkovitz has one of his stories. He had a patient who was an 18-year-old former yeshiva student who had dropped out of yeshiva. He was into marijuana. He was out of control. It was a total mess. He was his patient, and one fine day, Dr. Felkovitz finds out that this child who was really out of control just got a new Lexus from his parents. And what was the reason? It was his 18th birthday, so of course he got his Lexus. He had another patient, a young child. The child had his 5th birthday, so the parents made him a disco party. 5 years old. Why? Why? Because the child asked for it. That's why. So when we have situations which, Baruch Hashem, we can recognize them as being way out there, ridiculous, but some parents they get worn down, beaten down, because they don't have the proper limits and controls within their relationship, and they figure the only way to maintain that relationship is just to do whatever the child asks for, and that is the relationship. So that's clearly not what we're looking for. There are a number of factors that go into this relationship. First and foremost are the halachos of kibbud av v'em and yira av v'em, honoring and revering. Such things as contradicting a parent or validating a parent, like letting a parent know that they were correct. All these things they're forbidden by the halacha for a child to do to his parent. You can't sit in a parent's seat. You can't stand in their regular place. You can't call them by their first name. These are all basics in halacha of kibbud av v'em, and many times the lines get blurred again because we're trying to build that relationship, and we have not set clearly in our own minds what those limitations and those boundaries are. So we have to keep in mind that the halachas are very apropos to our particular situation. From time to time in school, we do teach the children these halachas. Not enough, but they're things that the children can relate to. I bring them up here only as sort of a guidebook for us, that these are things that we have to do, not for our honor, but for the children's needs, because they have this obligation to have the proper relationship with their parents. We don't want to be the ones responsible for them being guilty of violating Torah laws, even though it's complex, and there may be times that we can certainly give up on our honor, we can forgive it, but everything has to be in control. We're going to speak about that a little bit more. So the approach of being an authoritative parent is to be assertive without being aggressive. And you have to have clear in your own mind, and you have to communicate it. What things can be tolerated and what things cannot be tolerated from a child. And these requires forethought and thinking on your feet at the moment as well. But it's never, unless it's a situation of danger, it's always okay to say to a child, I need to think about it. You don't have to have the answer at the moment. There are obviously certain very stressful, time-bound situations when, you know, you're trying to get your kid into the car and you have 8 other kids sitting in the carpool and it's 8:23 and you're a 6.5 minute ride away from school. You know, there are those moments that you're going to be, it's not going to be the time to, you know, to reason with them or to, you know, there are those moments. Okay, you won't be judged for those moments. You can relax, but you have to understand that it has to be clear in your mind what you can tolerate and what you can't tolerate, with a mind on what's the best for the child. One thing that especially mothers have a challenge with is that how do you get your little children to stop saying and doing things which are basically a result of their young age. They're very young. They don't have much of a vocabulary. You know, they don't know too many words. If they're frustrated or upset, you know, they'll say things like, I hate you, mommy, or they'll hit you, things like that. I would say even, you know, as young as 2 years old, you have to say, that's not how we speak to mom. Just make it very clear. No punishments are necessary, but we must set that. That's not how we speak to mommy. That's not how we act to mommy. But you have to be able to establish yourself as someone who is not the child's friend. You're beyond that. Okay, you are an authority figure, not a scary authoritarian, but an authoritative one. When it comes to a child hitting you, so for sure you have to let it be known that that's not okay. Whether you're going to give you know, any kind of a consequence or not a consequence, you know, each situation is different. There are times that it's called for, times it's not called for, but just letting it be known that it's not okay is the major step here. That we don't, you know, and if you have to, certainly a little child, restrain them. You know, restrain them from hitting you. Okay. Next, not to do ever, which is the classic line. Just wait until your father comes home. And alternatives to that are, you know, just wait till, I don't know, you know, your teacher. What to wait till the teacher hears about it. It's deflecting that authority away from yourself. It's sort of like, and I'm going to be incriminating myself here, it's sort of like when a teacher kicks a child out of class, sends them to the office. The message that the children are getting is that I can't control you, and therefore I need somebody else to help me, which is a very tough message, because then you're eroding your own authority. And the same thing happens, you know, in the home. If you can't take control of a situation, so then you're undermining your own authority. Now, to say that we'll have to, you know, this is very serious, I'm going to have to discuss this with your father, we're going to see what we're going to do about it, that's fine, because that's showing that, you know, you're thinking about it, you care about it, and you're going to, you know, take it very seriously. That's a different story. But you're not putting yourself out of the equation when you say that we're going to, consult on this matter, or we may even consult with our rabbi. That's a whole other level, which is also it's a very great lesson for the child to learn just on the side, that, you know, when you have a situation, you know, an important situation, you consult with an authority, certainly a rav. So, but to say that, you know, wait till your father comes, the lesson is that I can't control you. And no matter how young the child is, they're going to get it. Yeah, no matter how low their grades are in math, they're going to get it. That they'll understand. That, they won't be able to articulate it, but that's the message, that you can't control me, so, you know, I can get away with a lot more things than, yeah. Now, the fact that the primary caretaker in general has less of that authority position, that's familiarity, and that would occur in any setting. It doesn't matter, the mother, the father, whoever it might be, a teacher in a classroom, she's with the kids all day long. So then, an administrator is a little bit removed, so they have that standing. But it's not. So therefore, they come across to the child as this is like a little bit out of the usual, and so they may, at least for the moment, it may control the child better. But to have this pattern of deflecting to somebody else, deflecting to a father who's not there as much, or the other parent, it erodes your own authority, and it's very unhealthy. Okay. Yes.
Quick question.
Sure.
About deflecting
Yes.
this punishment or this authoritative figure. I had a case with one of my kids later. It wasn't a little kid. Later in the education process, and I kept on getting phone calls from one teacher. Your son did this, your son did that, your son did this, your son did that. And it came to a point where I said, you know what do you want me to do? So, like the reverse situation, instead of me deflecting it to wait until daddy comes, wait until I tell your teacher, or the teacher sending out to us, it was, the communication was, your son did this, your son did that. So what am I supposed to do?
Right.
This is
right. I mean, that's a different question than
exactly.
than showing us the good example that this teacher was basically eroding their own authority by showing your son, daughter, that it was that he or she could not control them on her own. Definitely. What does a parent do in that situation? Try with the teacher, let them know how it's coming across, or an administrator. In school we just this is really digressing, but you have the parents who are very involved, and then sometimes interferes. That's one extreme. The other extreme is from 8 to 4. Here's your problem. I don't want to hear about it. That kind of thing. So that's So if the child is well behaved, that's fine. But if there's issues, obviously it's a partnership. So it's got to be the right balance. But what you're saying, it sounds like it went out of balance, and therefore the teacher was just making it harder for him or herself.
Is this teenage age that they just don't see the lines, and they talk in the way they want, and I can picture myself looking at the 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, but all of a sudden when they
right. So hopefully we'll touch on that a little bit later. understanding what your child is saying.
Exactly what he said. That the teacher is giving up her
Yeah.
control, and
But
that's why
then-
you're only getting calls from that teacher. It's not just the kid.
and then the kid
The perfect example, just the reverse.
exactly
So
talking
the
to
teacher's telling your kid, just you wait till I call your mother. Yeah, you have to deal with it.
Right, exactly. So it's interesting. I mean, it's again a digression, but I think it hammers home this point. There was research done, it's already 30 years ago, that 90% of children's behavior in a classroom is dependent upon the adult in the room. What's their projection of authority or lack thereof is overwhelmingly the major factor in how the children will behave. And I have seen it in my own eyes, that I had a homeroom teacher, who then a specialty teacher would come in, and as they're both in the room, and as the main teacher sort of shifts off the stage, and in this case a relatively ineffective specialty teacher was taking over, and I was in the room, the whole demeanor of the students totally changed. It was the same classroom, they were sitting in the same seats. I was in the room, their teacher was still in the room, but now the authority shifted over to a different person who didn't have that same control. And it was just so fascinating to see, but that's all examples of what we're talking about.
Can I just ask about the being assertive without being aggressive? Like, some children just have a really hard time listening. I don't know, each child, some children just are much more easy to comply. Some children just have much stronger nature. They don't want to listen. And so sometimes, it's time to take a bath. We're going to the bath now, and you've given your 5 warnings, and it's like, okay, we're going. You physically pick up the child and bring them to the bath. Is that called being aggressive?
certainly not after you've given them choices, and certainly assuming that you can still pick them up easily, that they haven't gotten to that point.
The easier children make you feel like such a good parent.
Right.
Then you have the
And
child
then
who
you have the
wants
child,
it.
and it's like,
Right.
I thought I knew what I was
I
doing.
disagree. I think the hard kids make you feel like a good parent. When you have a good moment with a challenging kid, you're like, okay, I just rocked this.
Yes, I feel like you want a battle.
Right.
I mean, there are techniques in dealing with children who you can't give instructions to directly. One thing that comes to mind is giving choices.
I love that.
Okay, you want to take your bath with the red duck, or you want to take the bath with the yellow duck, whatever. Between the two choices are what what you want to. Either one is going to fulfill your agenda, and the child is having that small piece of independence, feeling that they were able to choose, and not just that they're being told what to do. So those that's using strategies for difficult situations. Okay, another just basic rule in being assertive is never repeat directions more than 3 times. Repeat directions. You can say them 3 times. Don't add and embellish. Just very calmly, like we call it the broken record technique. Those of you who still know what a record is, but, certainly a broken record, right? And it just keeps going, yeah. So it keeps going and going and going. So, but it's always the same sound. So you don't have to escalate. Just calmly repeat the instructions 3 times, but no more than 3 times. And then you'll need to either give a consequence, which you should have in mind, a consequence. It depends on the situation. If you can walk away and say that I'm not gonna tell you anymore, and then there's so many variables. It depends what the situation is. You walk away. You ignore the child. It obviously depends what it is. If they're beating up their little sister, you can't just ignore it. But as a general rule, repeat the instruction 3 times, and then you don't tell them anymore. You should have a consequence in place if necessary. It's time out, whatever it might be. The child has to know that you're not going to keep going, because that's how they wear you down, and that's how they ultimately get away with things, which is what they learn also. Which is that you just keep whining, you just keep defying. Eventually, the parent gives up. So you have that in mind only 3 times. Okay. Now,
what about help from asking for help, asking for pickup on the floor? This for help.
and you're asking them to help you out, and they're not cooperating.
Right.
So that's a whole different story. How you let them know that you're a little disappointed. Saying you're disappointed is not necessarily a good thing, because that has its own. For some children, it has a big negative. That you mean you're disappointed with the child this moment for this not doing this one thing. The child may take it as you're disappointed, like my mother thinks like I'm a worthless human being. So you have to be careful with that. But you can let them know. Oh, I see. Okay, I guess when you get bigger, you'll be older and more mature, and you'll be able to do this, or and whatever. That's we can give a whole class on that just by itself. But that's the basic approach is that don't keep at it. Again, it's 3 times, and if they don't do it, so you let them know in a firm but kind way that I see that I have to get somebody else who understands chesed more. You have to think these things through beforehand. You have to know the child, what the situation is.
What about that child who sneaks it in at the last second? Like, you've given your 3 repeated instructions, and then you're like, okay, now I'm going to give you a consequence. Like, oh, okay, now I'm going to listen. Like, you have to follow through with the consequence.
I don't think it's worth it. If you see that's the pattern, that's just how the child's going to be. I don't know that it's going to change when they're an adult either. Hopefully they'll recognize that people are a little disappointed with them. That's harder, because they get away with it, and it's just making it. At the end of the day, you got what you needed. It wasn't the way you wanted it, but again, as we said in the beginning, we don't want robots. We want keep the long-term vision in place, as frustrating as it might be for us. Okay, let's say you give an instruction and the child is not complying, and you realize that it was really too much. There's really much to ask of them, or the circumstances are such that you can't wait for the child to comply. For instance, let's say you told the child, as soon as you finish cleaning up your the playroom, or you tell all the children, as soon as the playroom is cleaned up, we're going to have supper. Playroom's a mess, and it's not going, and you got to serve supper, and they got to eat, and they got to get finish up and get to bed. So you realize that you have a problem. So you have one of two choices. You can just ignore what you said, serve supper, and again you're undermining your authority. Or you could continue to demand that they keep cleaning up, and then you're all off schedule, and the kids are all kvetchy, and it just becomes a battle. If you realize that you need to backtrack, you still need to maintain your mastery over the situation. Meaning that, okay, I see we started. Okay, maybe we'll finish later because now it's time for supper. And then, but if you have to reverse and go back on your word, you be the master of that. If you say, "Mommy decided that really now we have to do this. We have to go. And now we don't have enough time for it. Whatever it might be, but you're the one who's controlling it. In that way, you're not eroding your own authority, which is many times. Let's say you have a situation. I've seen it numerous times. Child comes to carpool in the afternoon. They dump their backpack, on the floor right behind the van, and they can't be bothered. And the mother said, "Put the backpack in the car," and whatever, they ignore her. So what do you do in that situation? You got the car is full of kids. You got to get out of the line, and the kid's not doing it. So you can stand and have an argument with them, and if you have a strong enough character and withstand all the administrators and other drivers, glaring at you, honking at you, that's one thing. But you realize that you can't wait for the child to conform. So you say, okay, mommy's going to pick it up this time, but we're going to have to talk about this more and maybe practice, putting your backpack in the car. Okay, practicing doing things is a very effective consequence in general. You find a time when the child would otherwise be playing or have free time, and say, now we're going to practice, and you actually practice. Okay, you come to the car, what's the best thing you should do? What happens if somehow it ends up in the car? Mommy says you have to put it in. How do you do it? Do it 1, 2, 3 times. You don't have to give a whole argument, the whole lecture. Don't give a whole argument, the whole lecture. Just go through the routine. And the child will learn that they're going to get used to following that simple little rule. Okay. In general, it's important to recognize, and it's hard to think of in the heat of the moment, but children really want limits and rules and boundaries. That is really what they want. Rabbi Zev Lev, who used to be Rav here in North Miami Beach, so he tells a story that a 16-year-old boy came to him once, and he was in tears. What was the story? The story was that his parents, I guess they were divorced, and his father called him in one day, and he said, "Here, I'm giving you a credit card, $5,000 spending each month. Here's the keys to a sports car, it's yours. Here's keys to a condo, you've got your own place to live." He said, "I'm getting remarried, and my new wife doesn't want to have any kids around, so you're on your own." So as Rabbi left in his inimitable fashion tells the story, 16-year-old with a credit card, sports car, condo, wow, he hit the jackpot. Why is he crying? So he was crying because he's losing his relationship with the parent. Part and parcel of that relationship as a parent is a situation where you have controls, you have limits, you're not just free. This young man was as free as any teenager would ever dream or claim to want. But he understood that without the relationship with the parent, it was not. So the good news is that the children want these rules. They want controls. It gives them a sense of security. With the famous Dvar Torah with the Nachash, with the snake. The snake. What was the curse of the snake? The curse of the snake after he caused Chava and Adam to sin. His punishment was that he goes on his stomach and he has to eat the dust of the earth. So why is that a curse? Sounds so great. Like if he's eating dust, that means his meals are always ready for him. He doesn't have to wait. He doesn't have to clean up his toys before it's time to eat. I mean, it's all there. Because when you have everything without working for it at all, so there's no relationship. You have no relationship, and therefore you don't appreciate it, and you don't have any connection. And that was the curse of the Nachash. He was off on his own, just like that teenager, off on his own. Just like how many of us appreciate the fact that we have air to breathe every day. Air is free, air is abundant, it's everywhere. It's not something that anybody thinks about or appreciates because it's just it's just there. So children appreciate having these limits. The only thing you have to realize is that when a parent sets limit, or a parent lets limits, or a parent starts setting limits where until now there haven't been limits, so the children will research aggressively to see whether those limits are for real. Which is why whenever you impose any kind of a behavioral plan on a child, the first week or two are much harder because they're testing to see how far they can go. Do you really mean it? Like now you say, where whatever, you can't, you only get 15 minutes on your, on your iPad today. Every day it's 15 minutes. So they're not going to stop at 15 minutes. They're going to see, does it mean 15? Does it mean 16? Does it mean 18, 20? They're going to keep going. You have to recognize that when you try to be a little bit more setting limits more firmly, they are going to push back. Not because they're defiant, not because they're chutzpahdik, but because they're doing research.
Can you teach a child?
Checking it out.
Can you teach a child to delay their gratification?
Can you teach them to delay? You can try to train them. Obviously, the younger the age, the better. But you can teach them like you can teach them anything else. It involves, the adults have to role model. It has to be consistent. But definitely, and you do it incrementally. You do it, a little bit at a time. It depends what it is. If they have to have, a lollipop 3 minutes after they wake up in the morning, and that's the situation that you're in right now. You have to do 3 tasks before you do it, and then it has to be 5 minutes, then 10 minutes. You work your way up. It's depending on their age. If they're very young, then it's basically just habituating them to get into the better habits. If they're older, it has to be with more rewards and more explanation of what it is. But it really a lot depends on what the specifics are. But definitely, every child is, as we've mentioned before, children are very resilient. We can make lots of mistakes, and we haven't lost them, and they're certainly not condemned to having these character traits forever. They definitely can. Adults can improve. It's very hard. We know how hard it is to change one midah, but for the children, it's much easier. So with our help, we can definitely help them. Okay, so just to try to get a picture of what an authority is and what discipline does, look at it as the walls of a house. Because when you have your disciplinary rules and they are clear and they're set, walls of a house are absolutely necessary. They're not greatly appreciated, nor are they resented. Right? The wall is the wall. This is the end of our house. And we'd much rather have a solid wall at the end of our house than to have a broken wall or a weak wall or no wall at all. We need the wall. So discipline is we're building an environment where there are walls. And a child it's not hard at all for a child to live within an environment where there are rules, just like it's not hard for anybody to live, within a space that has walls around it. In fact, it's comforting. It gives a sense of security, and it helps the child and anybody to function properly. I mean, the flip side of having stable walls is imagine yourself on an airplane during turbulence. Okay, in addition to the fear, which is that's in the background, and for a child to be in a fearful situation, which is what a lack of discipline at home is, they're experiencing turbulence, and sometimes it's because of ineffective parenting. Sometimes it's situations out of your control. If there's shalom bias problems, the parents are not getting along, which can happen, or somebody is ill. There's some situation, or even during times of, it could even be a simcha, but like everything is upside down, and the rules go out the window. So basically, you have to realize that a child is living in turbulence. If you can, recall situations when you were on a plane and trying to concentrate on something, or to relax, or to feel okay, even if you didn't have any fear, but the turbulence just like you can't think. You just can't think. You can't function properly. So a child who grows up in a circumstance where there's no discipline, where there's no boundaries, no control, they're living in turbulence, and it's very challenging. So we have to recognize that within the children. Okay. We had spoken in the past about seeing the long range picture. Number 2 is be loyal to your child's potential. It sounds simple, but it's a very deep concept. When we're in a situation and we have to make a decision, or when we're trying to figure out what to do, or we're acting. So certainly with children who are a 24/7 responsibility, so many times we put our priorities in different places. But the ultimate priority is, what is your child's potential? So you have to try to figure out what the child can do, and it's usually more than you think, certainly more than a tantruming 4-year-old would seem to indicate he'll be able to do in his life. But all children have tremendous potential. We have to figure out what it is, and unfortunately there are people who live their whole lives never realizing, because they never discovered what their actual potential was. But everybody is given strengths by Hashem to accomplish something in life. You have to realize that when you're making decisions, or when you're setting up rules and situations, I'm loyal to what my child's potential is. That is where my loyalty lies. And it's not to, even though you have to have a clean house and a neat house and a well organized, but when you're making decisions about what to demand of a child, not demand, what to give, what to not, what is the child's potential? I want to work for that. Okay, if we're going to, you think your child might have a talent in music. You can't really afford music lessons. But what you can't afford music lessons because because you have to take 2 vacations a year. So you feel you need it, but think about it honestly. Like, maybe we can do it with 1 vacation a year, and this way I'm building up my child. To honestly, try to be the best parent we can, and to fulfill our responsibilities with the trust that Hashem has given us of our children, we have to see what can I do to maximize my child's potential. And again, everything is a balance. We have to maintain our sanity, we have to maintain our functioning, and all of those things go into the mix. But we have to realize that our ultimate loyalty has to be to our children's potential. And situations come up all the time. This one wants to schlep us out, this one wants to come visit. It's at my child's expense, it's his time. Just realize it's not just a question of, okay, we'll sit around the Shabbos table, we'll have a few minutes, and I'll fulfill my obligation that way. You have to really see what's the impact of this, on my child and what they're going to be. So that's just as a mindset, being loyal to your child's potential. And you have to realize when you're talking about potential that we have mentioned this also, that the rule followers have a very different potential from the rule breakers. And many times the rule breakers have enormous potential. Story I came across not too long ago, Rav Chaim Ozer Grzinski, who was the leader of Torah Jewry right before World War II, very, very great gadol. I mean, they say about him that he was able to write two different things with his right hand and his left hand at the same time. I mean, that was the extent of his tremendous genius. Anyway, the story is that when he was around 10 years old in Cheder, so one day he brought in a goat, and his intention in bringing in the goat was to have a real life illustration of what his opinion of his Rebbe was. So this child brought in a goat. And we would pull him out by the ear. We would suspend him, expel him. Take away his recess till he was 18 years old, or whatever it would be. It was clearly very inappropriate, but it was a creative, innovative, out-of-the-box thinker who was, very comfortable asserting his own, independence and his own thinking, and he became such a great. So we have to realize that sometimes potentials are not so easy to see. But they have to. It's our responsibility to try to find them. Yes.
What happens when the parents see potentials differently? I've come across this many times. Like my husband and I, we have different perspectives on our kids. Sometimes I think I'm a little bit more accurate. Sometimes I actually think he's more accurate. But how do you find that balance when there's something you're really seeing in your child, or there's something the other spouse is really seeing? How do you kind of come to that?
Are they, they're contradictory, or they're just two separate?
Sometimes, I feel like my child should be pushed in a certain way. Sometimes I feel like sometimes my husband feels like the child should be pushed, and I feel like it would be not helpful. So how do you balance that, where you think that the child should be pushed and the other parent doesn't see it?
You try to talk it out, try to figure it out, and submit to an impartial third party who you respect, and see if they can help you navigate. I mean, that's, anytime you have you have a disagreement, you may want to, maybe there's a trusted teacher or principal who you feel might have insight into the children who may be able to add some dimension. But just the very process of looking for it, thinking about it, discussing it is already putting the kids at a tremendous advantage, because that's what they need. They need their parents' unconditional love and concern and interest in what's best for them. So that's more important than who's right or exactly which one is the right way. Okay, just want to mention an emotional bank account. It's a terminology that's become quite popular. The way to look at how to have this relationship with a child that will at once be loving and caring and close connection, and yet authoritative and having controls and having boundaries, is to look at it like a bank account. In a bank account you make deposits, in a bank account you make withdrawals. The purpose of the bank account is not to have a lot of money in it, it's to serve your purpose of having the funds in there when you need them. So, I'm sorry?
Cash flow.
The cash flow, right. So you want to make sure that you have enough deposits, because you definitely have to make withdrawals. So some examples of deposits are, doing little favors for your children, being honest with them, clarifying expectations, being honest, being forgiving of the children, apologizing when it's necessary, spending time with them, getting them gifts, just smiling at them. All the things that we do naturally, recognize those as deposits into this bank account. The withdrawals that we need to make are, we have to say no to them. They want something, we have to say no. That's a withdrawal. We're enforcing a rule. We have to go away, whether it's business, vacation, we go away, the kids are not happy, it's not, not great, that's a withdrawal. You work overtime, you're going to shul, you're going to learn. You have a meeting, you're going to do a chesed. All these things, when you're taking away your attention and your focus from the children, these are withdrawals, and they're fine. What you have to keep in mind is that you don't go into a negative balance. It's just like the bank account. There's got to be enough deposits so that when you make these withdrawals, that you're still ahead of the game. And there are unexpected withdrawals. Unfortunately, things come up, and you have to disappoint children. It happens all the time, and it's very hard. You can, I don't like to use the word get away with it, but you can maintain your positive accounting with the children if you have a lot of these deposits. And so therefore you have to find the opportunities, and you're bonding with them when you give them a treat, not because they did something. You're just giving them a treat because you love them. That's the best way to, any relationship is strengthened when there's an unexpected benefit that one gives to the other. Okay, I don't want to get into men and giving presents and whatever else, but when the man comes home with flowers for their anniversary, he doesn't get too many points. If he comes home with flowers on some random Tuesday evening, so then you get a lot of points because it's not expected. So same thing with the children. You have to try to find the opportunities that the child wouldn't expect it, but it's greatly appreciated. Yes.
If I could add, Rabbi Baumann, there's a very good book, The 5 Love Languages, which is a very good book for relationships. But they have one for children now.
Really?
And it really helps like the parent identify what the particular bank account would work for the child. Not every child, some of it's time, some of it's gifts, some of it's words of affirmation. So it's I think that it almost like creates like a very specific emotional bank account to like understand each other.
What's the name of it?
It's The 5 Love Languages. It's by Dr. Gary Chapman.
5 Love Languages by
But for
Dr.
kids.
Gary Chapman for
Yeah,
kids.
for kids. Also, they have one.
Okay, very good. Okay. All right, I think our time is up. I guess we'll get to the rest of the outline next week and
Thank you.
keep moving on. Okay, thank you all.
Old workbooks from Project Gareth that the school used to do.